It has been made apparent that mankind has no choice of action in regards to his or her being created into a living human being. As this is said to be of the ordainment of God, for a sacred purpose during the moment of being intellectually thought of, and therefore cultivated as a necessity for to exist inside of the living experience to serve a purpose for humanity considered good and bad. All of which are point of views. All based upon one's own individual experiences and the perceptions and convictions derived from the effects of the past. Has this not been the factor of which gives prophecy its fundamental purpose? The choosing of the principle of purpose regarding being a righteous human being, or one that is deemed as unrighteous. The potentiated dual-natured human being and thus, purpose for existence is within itself in understanding, a walk of constant challenges with oneself, as all of whom are a part of the same nature and journey, fundamentally clash with one another because of the grappling of the inner selves. The journey of the hurting, whom hurts his brother and sister, as also his or her mother and father who has also been hurt. We come to find through living in our own curiosity, our interest through observation that the environment which creates the need for prophecy to posse's meaning and purpose is by way of our own nature of being in opposition of what is morally upright, and just brings the necessity for the law and commandments. All of which gives way for the ideology and intellectual epidemiology of prophecy to exist. Can humanity have a belief in prophecy, disagree with what asserts will come forth because of immorality and the human being deciding in taking account in resolving his or hers immoral actions and causing prophecy to be perceived as just another rhetoric imposed upon humanity, as but only a tool for to influence mankind into not taking what he or she does seriously as improper, and decided to alter and yet transform the asserted course of what is written of prophecy, revealing it as nothing less than another constitution of religious doctrine which goes in harmony with government tyranny? As what has been the case for centuries, the human family have numerous times been faced and challenged with complications which many have had a resolve of those issues, but investigations were considered invalidated in even trying to resolve because of what has been noted in prophecy. Well, you know, it's what is written, and so it can't be changed because it's the will of God. Can it not be changed? Or, do you not want it to be resolved? The human family for many centuries have forgotten through time that they are in fact humanity. Humanity was incapacitated by human beings' inhumane acts, and humanity will only be healed by human beings' acts of humane treatment towards one another. However, we have entered an era which seems to possess no end, which is rooted in hatred, pains and animosity, as this is noted and therefore imbued insidiously in historical accounts. Harsh historical accounts continue to cause an opposition of the healing from historical ill deeds committed against humanity. The refusal of resolve for what has been committed against one another is but as an opposing serum being poured into a gaping open wound which serves no true purpose for the kind of wound presented. Is this in truth what prophecy implies of never a time of when humanity will enable to heal itself? John 5 verse 14. King James Version. Afterward Yeshua findeth him in the temple, and said unto him, Behold, thou art made whole, sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee. Humanity was in fact made whole inside. Notwithstanding, humanity has committed acts against itself, which in harmony transmitting to humanity, that this form of self-abuse is against its nature to perform, yet not without the potential to perform against itself. Self-destruction is an intellectual choice, as it derives from a form of deceptive intelligence which make the host think that self-destructive thinking and behavior is fair-seeming, in spite of how the heart causes the host to feel, as what is in the heart is clarity of the principles and thus, the right choosing for the host. To continue to live within the realm of the effects of those before you, whom have caused a self-destructive act upon themselves and others, in the realm of traditional habitual, breeds further self-destruction for the earth abroad, if the human family do not let go of what is written in books, and come in contact and knowing of what is within the heart. Is humanity able to know of what is within the heart and minds of men and women? It is said that, only God knows the heart of men and women. This implies also that, no man or woman knows what is ensued within their own hearts, as either a device for liberation unto heaven, or the nature given by the divine of being an irredeemable soul, whom is destined of the fires of hell and punishment. This implies that either man or woman will in truth, ever in truth come through time to know themselves precisely, but are condemned morally and eternally due of having the lack of humanity in their actions because of never knowing their given heart conclusively, while never the allowing of knowing the full nature and potential of themselves in terms of moral understanding, potential and thus, capabilities. Therefore, those who are created and deemed to go to this hell, which religion claims, was immorally conceived and manifested within the will of injustice and lack of compassion in never applying them the nature of overcoming the evil within. Given a life existence which is condemned and therefore intended to morally fail by way of his or hers act of immorality. However, evil gives identity to goodness, the same as goodness give identity to what is deemed evil. As this continues, the human family will in time become wise enough to think for themselves from what has been produced and given. It gives a clear fundamental meaning of the words of Yeshua, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Written by David Anthony Brayboy. Is humanity able to know of what is within the heart and minds of men and women? It is said that, only God knows the heart of men and women. This implies also that, no man or woman knows what is ensued within their own hearts, as either a device for liberation unto heaven, or the nature given by the divine of being an irredeemable soul, whom is destined of the fires of hell and punishment. This implies that either man or woman will in truth, ever in fact come through time to know themselves precisely, but are condemned morally and eternally due of having the lack of humanity in their actions because of never knowing their given heart conclusively, while never the allowing of knowing the full nature and potential of themselves in terms of moral understanding, potential and thus, capabilities. Therefore, those who are created and deemed to go to this hell, which religion claims, was immorally conceived and manifested within the will of injustice and lack of compassion in never applying them the nature of overcoming the evil within. Given a life existence which is condemned and therefore intended to morally fail by way of his or hers act of immorality. However, evil gives identity to goodness, the same as goodness give identity to what is deemed evil. As this continues, the human family will in time become wise enough to think for themselves from what has been produced and given. It gives a clear fundamental meaning of the words of Yeshua, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them. And the Lord's anger was kindled on that day, and he swore, saying, "And the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of the Lord, was consumed." God's anger in having to be kindled in a time, implies God not knowing precisely of what could transpire of the actions of the human being within the course of time. As that designated time was and is designed as a prophetic reality. Anger is present inside, however an act against God's pleasing is that which kindles the anger to be made to be executed. This and the design of prophecy serves as a contradiction in principle. God, having been accused of being the sole author of prophecy, in asserting to know what will transpire as the author, has a time of when its anger will be kindled, as if God is surprised, displeased, or dissatisfied in the actions of the observed and yet designed in terms of a participant of acts against God's will. This implies that God, even though professed is the author of the doctrine of prophecy, is in fact not the all-knowing. The doctrine of prophecy serves as a tool for government tyranny. As this should not be a sudden revelation considering the Bible being authorized as required reading by the political powers. James I, who was born June 19, 1566, in the Edinburgh Castle, Edinburgh, Scotland. He died March 27, 1625, in Theobalds, Hertfordshire, England. King of James was a strong advocate of royal absolutism. What is absolutism? It is the acceptance of or belief in absolute principles in political, philosophical, ethical, or theological matters. Absolutism is the political doctrine and practice of unlimited centralized authority and absolute sovereignty, as vested especially in a monarch or dictator. The Ten Commandments. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. What are the main ideas of absolutism? Absolutism, political doctrine and practice of unlimited, centralized authority in absolute sovereignty, especially as vested in a monarch. Its essence is that the ruling power is not subject to regular challenge or check by any judicial, legislative, religious, economic, or electoral agency. This has been imbued and therefore injected into religious doctrine and therefore used as a tool for to go in harmony with the aims of any government system whose fundamentals are intertwined with the assertions of religious doctrine in terms of prophecy. In this form of miseducation, the people have been, and are deceived. And as before, the people know not what they do, even though through the centuries of the deception of information being the device for evil intentions, they have been programmed and conditioned through tradition, that they know what they are doing to manifest the heaven which they desire and been made to think and feel the government systems abroad the earth with the same agenda through the UN Charter, are working in tandem of their personal interest for peaceful times coming forth, and yet the world is within a state of hell, because the kingdom of God inside of the minds and hearts of the human family has been invaded and contaminated with the intentions and ill education of Babylon. What those who have died to themselves as they were and have stepped outside of the workings and activities of the world system and its effects upon the human family, are able to perceive precisely a world being led into darkness, asserted as the light and way, because the people of God and therefore, human beings of goodwill, have been made blind by way of innumerable methods of destruction, giving themselves to those devices becoming tools of their own self-destruction. But, as you already understand, this all can be turned around with the choice of dying to what is activating inside of the mind of the human family, so that what has life is able to shine from the hearts of men and women, to create the heaven which we all know and understand is the dawning of resolution and the peace upon Mother Earth of those who desire humanity instead of tyranny, are enabled to exist. Written by David Anthony Brayboy.